Welcome to the Sage Family Podcast,
where we explore natural, homeschooling, gentle parenting,
simple living, and family adventure.
I'm Rachel Rainbolt, the Sage Parenting Coach, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest, where I live wild and free in connection with my 3 wildlings and the Papa Bear in our fixer-upper on the beach. This is episode 10, and today I'm here with my friend Deena Barselah talking about beauty. Deena is an integrative health coach and educator, a wife and mom to 3-year-old Zeke, and she leans on simple, natural, and time-tested methods to care for herself and her family. Get ready to upend all the notions you're carrying around beauty. This is gonna be fun. So join us around the campfire and let's get living the family life of our dreams. Shout out to our new patron, Mandy Goss. As Sky likes to say, thanks for being awesome. If you are loving the Sage Parenting Podcast, you can become a part of it too through Patreon, where you can support these important conversations, help make this show great, and get rewards doing it. For our adventure of the week today, it's actually going to be adventures. My adventures appear to be piling up. So first, I want to talk about our indoor skydiving. That was a really fun adventure for all the adrenaline seekers among us. Had a huge turnout. It was a special homeschool program, so we got to learn about all the engineering behind indoor skydiving. We got to speak with an aerospace engineer. It was a super fun experience. And of course, I have pictures and videos of that up on my Instagram page. Just follow Sage Parenting. We also explored a new museum this week called Living Computers. It's basically full of like robots and virtual reality, things like Minecraft and old school video games. It was super cool. Bailey took a workshop on this special homeschool day for Lego Mindstorms, where he built and programmed robots to run these mazes. And Sky did a workshop, rock, paper, scissors, where she was programming this sensor to play rock, paper, scissors. Sky said it was the best museum she's ever been to, which is saying a lot because we go to a lot of museums. And then lastly, we took a weekend trip recently down into Portland. A good friend of Sky's who's been traveling full time, her family's been in an RV for the last year. They invited us to a surprise birthday party for them. So we made it a weekend trip. We went to the Wooden Shoe Tulip Farm, which was amazing and in full bloom. And then we met up with one of Bailey's really good friends who he Skypes with and plays Minecraft with, that we had met at an unschooling conference. That was a surprise for Bailey, which was really fun. And then the next day we met up for that surprise birthday party with our other friends. So it was a really fun trip, like friendship nourished, nature nourished, adventure nourished. It's been a really lovely last couple of weeks. Today, my friend Deena is joining me to talk about beauty. We met years ago when her precious Zeke was just 2 weeks old in my Sage Baby Massage class, and she's done some Sage coaching over the years as Zeke has grown, and she's just a rad woman, so we've stayed connected ever since. So tell us your story, Deena. Who are you? What are you passionate about? What about your relationships in life fulfill you? What is your relationship to this topic of beauty?
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here. This is like, I definitely feel like this is a celebrity moment. Because we've become friends and we talk about all the parenting stuff, but I love your podcast and this is just so exciting.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So, my background is, going way back, but I grew up with a ton of like chronic health issues. And I grew up in a totally conventional Western house. Like if anything was going on, I went to the doctor for it. There was no sense of like healthy living or health being a topic in my home. And yet I was struggling with all these different things. I got throat infections really regularly. I had digestive issues my whole life. Like I pooped like once a week throughout my entire childhood. And everybody just said like, oh, you got the digestion from our lineage, basically. And that's just what it was. And I didn't feel good in my body as early as I can remember that being a thing. Right. I remember like even really young ages looking at my friends, my girlfriends, women who were older than me, friends, older siblings, whatever it was. And I remember looking at them thinking that like they had something I didn't have, or really often very tuning into when they would talk about their bodies or what they thought of themselves. I wasn't at all tuned into health because that just was not something on my radar as something to pay attention to.
Right. Well, and on the mainstream path and in a mainstream family, health isn't really like a thing. You know, it's like you're sick, you go to the doctor, you buy the products.
You're right. Exactly.
You apply them.
Thing. Sick is a thing.
Right. You try to fix problems, but there's not really a health, intention in there.
Not at all. That was just, and it was never something I heard people talk about. I mean, maybe like if you didn't have a cold, you were healthy. I mean, that was kind of like the extent of it, but no one ever talked about like the fact that all these people in my family never had bowel movements as being like a health issue. It was just like, well, bummer, like that was the end of it. So, I really do remember, and as like, in the past couple of years, the more I work with women, I've been tuning into that more and more. And then in my teenage years, like so many other young women I knew, but not at all like excused, I had an eating disorder, and I would like throw up my food a lot after meals, and that moved into college of like, I carried around a bunch of extra weight on my body, but just thinking that I needed to diet more. And I dieted a ton. Like it started when I was 15 and all the way until I was like 29 when I started to really understand like inflammatory foods and what was going on in my body. But that's how I grew up. I mean, I grew up around, my mom is like such a pivotal role here, and she just grew up in that world too. So it's not at all to blame her. And just
replicating those patterns.
Exactly. But like I grew up in a dieting house. I grew up in a house where there was like always like tons of refined carbohydrate foods, but everything was low fat, and just always conversation around restriction. So restriction from my mom, restriction for all of my mom's friends, the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, my grandmother. I mean, every woman I was around, all my friends' moms were always on a diet. Like, and that's just what I always knew of like, okay, no woman I knew, I had never met a woman who was happy with herself. Like, and ever gave like the impression of being like, happy with herself, comfortable in her own skin, liking the way she looked. I've never heard anyone say anything positive about themselves. Right. And so that was all part of it. That was all part of the image I had of what it meant to be a woman, really. Right. And that's become more clear to me in the past couple of years, because women don't say good things about themselves, and women will compliment other women. But what I noticed always is that it was complimentary of like, you would first see a woman say hi and then say, what do you, I love your shirt. Your earrings are great. Your makeup looks so pretty. And that's what the compliment would be. Right.
Like superficial praise. And then you in turn like reject and deflect and exclude.
Right. And then someone would say, oh, these earrings, I got them at whatever. I got them at Marshall's. Or, oh, this thing, I just, and it's just, that's always what would happen. It would in response, it would be like, it wouldn't be, thank you so much. I feel beautiful in this outfit.
Right. So when you were growing up, being a woman was wrapped up in like shame and control and suffering.
Absolutely. And that's where the eating disorder was. I mean, I would eat food and then feel too full in my body, and I would throw up, and then I would feel empty. And that emptiness was a sense of control, and that felt good. It was like a clean slate. It was like, okay, now I have an opportunity for renewal. Like if I were to really think about what that was then, I didn't understand it then. I just did it because I knew it was something that people did. And so, it's so much bigger, but I moved through childhood, early adulthood, all of these stages of life, adolescence, getting my period, not getting my period because I had polycystic ovarian syndrome and what that was about, like all these different things hormonally, digestively, what was coming out on my skin, all of these things, the way we think about beauty, but we don't think about them in terms of health. We only think about them on the surface and the superficial. And then I started to learn more about my chronic health issues. And that was really where the journey shifted big time, because I realized, okay, I have, in addition to the digestive stuff, I had thyroid issues and adrenal fatigue and chronic fatigue, and hair was falling out, just a whole litany of things going on in my body.
Right.
And then I really found a more holistic path, and I went back to school for integrative nutrition, and I really started to learn the idea of like one whole person in one body, and that every single thing in the body is connected, whereas that's just not, I grew up with a completely Western model, the truncated approach of like, well, here's your digestive system, this is your skin, this is your period, this is like, here's the birth control pill that you take so you can get your period, and we can put this cream on your face, and go take a laxative so you can poop.
Right.
And that's just, and once I started to understand, okay, well, if what I eat really matters, and how I sleep matters, and my sense of stress plays a role in my digestion or this or that, then of course it plays a role in what I look like on the outside. And of course it plays a role in how much weight is on my body. And of course it plays a role in how I feel day to day, what my energy is like. And I think that's where I've come into this new understanding of, as far as like the background goes of beauty and what it really means to own how we feel and own what we look like. But truly and authentically, not, all the stuff in the beauty industry is the same as taking a laxative to poop, or, it's all the same. It's another.
It's like isolated Band-Aids.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It's another thing that our culture tells us, oh, just do this and you'll feel better about this one thing. Yeah. But like the actual woman doesn't really feel better in her own skin.
Like this one piece is not enough or broken, and then here's the fix.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I think we all know women like this, right? Like we all know women who, when we see them, they always look really put together. They're wearing a great outfit. Their makeup is this, their hair is this, they have great accessories. All of this stuff, they meet the conventional view of what is like of thinness, of what a good looking body is, all of these things. But when you really look at them, or when you're able to like tune into their energy, you find this woman seems really uncomfortable. This woman doesn't seem happy. This woman is like surveying up and down all the women around her and is constantly fidgeting, or just is not. You see that she's not comfortable in her skin. And then by contrast, you see a woman who's like, quote unquote, overweight, not wearing any makeup. Her hair's thrown up in some whatever, but she is so beautifully comfortable in her body and in who she is, and is authentic and real, and can make eye contact and have this beautiful, genuine connection with you. And then you're like, oh, you're beautiful. This is that the beauty is just oozing out of you. Yes. And it's been so profound for me over the years, because I think about how I grew up, and, when I spend time with my mom, when I spend time with her friends, when I spend time with like that world that I grew up in, it's much more difficult for me now in terms of things like beauty, because it's not comfortable. you know.
Well, and this is a bit of a tangent, but I just really want to touch on that because it's so it plays a role for so many of us that when we step outside of our family of origin of the entire system that we were raised in, and we grow, it is incredibly difficult to then move back into that system and maintain in an authentic, like through and through and reflecting it to the outside way, that growth. It's why, like, when you go back home for the holidays, you feel like that little kid again, like all these same issues that you feel like, oh my God, I've grown so far beyond this. Like, you're right back there again. Because just like we were talking about in the physical health realm, there's this focus on these individual pieces and you're missing the picture when you're not taking it in as a whole. The field of psychology, it tended to look at the individual, and then marriage and family therapists came along and said, no, people don't exist really, truly as individuals. They're a part of a system. Like they are a product of part of their connections. Like you exist, within your connections to others and in this system. And so when we're talking about beauty, so many of us were raised in families and in communities and in connections that did not role model, a healthy version of beauty. And so even when we do a lot of work to grow on our own, when we then try to be in connection again with those system that we came out of, it can be tremendously difficult.
And I think there's so much that's like generational about that. There's different values that come into play. Like, I think, my mom is not a child of Holocaust survivors. My grandparents were actually born in Philadelphia, but a lot of friends I grew up being Jewish and in a Jewish community. A lot of people were, and there was a notion a lot amongst us as the grandchildren within other families too about like really cherishing that we could have things and that's like a message that came from the grandparents. And again, it wasn't my specific situation, but in my situation, my mom was a single mom working like 3 jobs, and we didn't have a lot of money. I happened to go to a private school, and I felt so fortunate to have like major financial aid. And a lot of the kids I grew up with, from 1st through 12th grade, actually were quite wealthy. A lot of the families had a lot of money. So we lived in our tiny row house in Philadelphia, which was a perfect house for us. It was just my brother, and my mom. But I would go to my friends' houses that lived in gigantic houses, and they had people that cleaned their homes, and that's what I was around.
Right.
And they were very grounded people. They weren't like the community that I grew up in. These other families were really grounded. There was nothing really like super showy about it. But I think that a lot of this stuff, like the appearance of the way we look and how we present ourselves and what we do to make ourselves look a certain way, comes a lot from this lineage of not having. And so then it flips so much to the other side. And now I grew up in totally I had everything I needed. We weren't lacking by any means at all. And I had these wonderful opportunities that were heavily subsidized, where I got to go to summer camp and go to private school and all this stuff. And, but now it swings in this other direction where like minimalism is this kind of trendy but amazing thing to be trendy right now, right? Like we talk about this, we talk about, your awesome like capsule wardrobe and stuff like that. But we have these, I think I don't want to use the word privilege, but it seems a bit like a privilege, to like watch a documentary or listen to a podcast on minimalism and then choose all the things that we want to get rid of and like design these lives. And I think about it from, the health and the beauty perspective too, because simplicity is a really big value of mine. It's becoming a bigger and bigger value, but it wasn't a chosen value for me growing up, and it wasn't a chosen value for like my ancestry, Right. Now it's a choice of the very specific, like curated things I want to have in my home, or I want to apply to my skin, or I want to wear, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that, that's why I feel like the going home around the holidays thing is like, it's so, there's so much that's wrapped up in what we think of beauty and what our values are. And like my mom, I always comment on this, but it's something that is so clearly a value of hers. When we see people that, like, if she hasn't seen a relative or a friend or someone in a little while, the first thing she'll always say is, if she had seen you after we saw you, she would say, Rachel looks good, right? Rachel looks good. And I challenge it a lot. It's like this thing that annoys me. And now I've like stepped back and been like, why does it bother me so much? Like,
but I love that you're examining that. Like that is like triggering something inside of you that you probably weren't even aware of when you were growing up. That the value placement, and the message that's inherent in that question.
That you have to look good. You have to look
and
put together.
That's the measure of your wellness, that how you look.
Yeah. Like that's the measure of the interaction.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, it was so great to catch up with Rachel. And my mom will definitely say these things later on. Mm-hmm. She will, but so clearly this is a value of hers.
Yeah.
And that's how I grew up. Like a bunch of people in my family, my great uncle, like my grandmother's brother started this garment company, like lots of, a lot of people in Philadelphia, but particularly Jews at that time, like were doing a lot of it was a lot of garment and textile work. And because of that, we all had there was all the boys in my family, the boys and the men always wore like beautiful suits. Like my brother was always in like a nice suit, and everybody would comment on that all the time. Mm-hmm. And I just, thinking about this podcast and this topic, I realized how much just the physical appearance has been such a big thing. And I grew up really close with my grandparents. And I think also my mom being a single mom, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. I would do sleepovers with them all the time. And my grandmother and I hung out we had such a special relationship. But my grandmother, I think about it's the stuff I was made fun of her about when I was younger. And it was this big joke, but she wore a girdle every day. Every single day, she pulled this super tight, awful garment on her to suck in her belly after having 3 kids or whatever. She wore a girdle every single day, and she got her hair done once a week. She didn't even wash it between. She would go every Friday, from my entire childhood. Wow. I'd get her hair done once a week, and they would put a ton of hairspray in it. So as a kid, it was the best to just bounce her hair up and down. I just always did that. And I was just that was the fun thing. And it was always a joke, but just these things that were so ingrained in my childhood.
Yeah. These powerful messages.
This is what beauty was. For my grandmother,
right.
It was not beautiful to have a belly. And so every article of clothing she ever wore, there was a girdle underneath it.
Wow. Shame and control and struggle.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating to actually think about all of it.
Yeah.
And then how I moved through things and started to look at health really differently.
Let's talk about that. So what is beauty? And I've given this some thought, and I define beauty as the aesthetic celebration of my story. Because we are our stories, right? And and I don't mean that you are your past or you are the labels assigned to you by others, but that who I am is a narrative I have written. For example, I am maternal. That's part of my story. My belly is squishy, my arms are strong, and my clothes have dirty little handprints. I am resilient. That's part of my story. So I have scars all down the back of my torso from a bone graft and spinal fusion surgery. And they are beautiful to me because they tell a story of resilience. So we
Oh wait, I
wear
totally forgot that you had the spinal fusion surgery too.
Yes.
I had it, and you just reminded me of that.
we're spine
Right. Okay.
twins.
Yes.
So we wear our values for the
Yeah.
world to see. And I value authenticity. So nothing is more beautiful to me than showing up as your whole authentic self. What is beauty to you?
Well, first of all, I love the way you described it. The aesthetic, the authentic aesthetic. Wait, say it again from the beginning.
The aesthetic celebration of my story.
The aesthetic celebration of my story. That's good. For me, beauty is just, it's all inward. It's an energy, it's a spirit, it's a connection that you make with someone. I think that for me, beauty has just gone beyond what you see. And it's not to say that I don't value what one sees, or what I see of others. I do. I still do, and I'm sure I always will. But it is, I think it's a connection within one person, like me. It's me connecting to everything, and I guess I just don't. I hadn't used the word story, but I think I think of it really similarly. But it's the way I think of what's happened to my body, what my body keeps moving through, and it's a strength. I think that to look at it just as like what you see diminishes so much what a person's capacity really is and who a person really is. So when you say like the scar that you have from your spinal fusion surgery, I mean, I have the same scar. It goes all the way down my back. And for many, many years, I did everything I could to cover it up. I chose clothing that hid my scar. I only wore like racerback bathing suits when I was a teenager, so you couldn't see any of the scar. And that's so obviously like, it's not just about the physical scar you see, it's all the scars. It's all the things you can do to cover it up. Yeah. And it is part of me. And the health struggles that I still go through, I mean, they're healed to such a great degree, and I can catch things earlier, but the part of what I go through in my body is also my beauty. It's just who I am. It's me feeling connected to myself. So it absolutely is my story. And the beauty is so much more than what you see on the surface.
Yeah, when people show up, particularly women, show up as their whole authentic selves, and I say particularly women because it's especially difficult based on the messages from society and where the values are placed. But when we can show up as our whole authentic selves, that when I meet someone who's showing up as their whole authentic self, like it takes my breath away. Like I feel like, oh my God, what a beautiful woman. And I feel so much more connected and so much more inspired.
And I think it's the wall that so many women put up that now I spot. I think it's triggered from my childhood, but now I notice it more, and I actually feel uncomfortable around women that have a really big wall. And that wall, that like shelter around who they really are is I don't want to say it's not beautiful, because it's honoring, that they have
where they are in their journey.
It's honoring where they are, exactly. But it makes me feel more uncomfortable now. Mm-hmm. It's not really the energy that I want to be around so much. And I find that now the women I find in my life that I find to be most beautiful are those that will break down in front of me, or those that will be really honest, those that will set real boundaries around what they will do and they won't do, and who they are and what feels comfortable to them, what they will allow, what they won't allow, like all of these different things. And that's, to me, really beautiful.
Yeah, as human beings, we gravitate toward beauty. And so when we experience beauty as someone showing up as their whole authentic self, like that's a game changer. You know, those are the people that we are gravitating toward and being inspired by. And I give no fucks like what number is on your scale, or like if you have
but
a
I think
zit
it makes
that
a lot
day.
of people, and I think it deters a lot of people. I think a lot of women are turned off by that. Like I'm really drawn to that. You were really drawn to that, but I think a lot of women are uncomfortable with that because they are not in touch with their true, authentic stories and themselves yet.
Well, that's not what society values.
Exactly.
You know, and so it takes a lot of, it's not anyone's fault. And I would say that, you know, it's not any one person's fault, and it's not like an individual woman's fault, but there's a difference between, there's this point where like, it's not about fault, and I don't blame an individual person. But it is your responsibility to, you know, because no one else can do it for you, like to do the work of getting outside of that. And so let's talk about that, like the struggle. Yeah. Why is it such a struggle for women to comfortably inhabit the space of beautiful, to feel and to know their raw beauty?
Because it's just not what's out there for the most part. You know, social media doesn't help. I think the conversations that women have around buying things, acquiring things, bringing more into their lives, it's always okay, I'll buy this shirt, or I'll get this lipstick, or I'll be beautiful. Right, and then I'll be beautiful. I'll get this plastic surgery, and then I'll be beautiful. I'll dye my hair, and then I'll be beautiful. It's just everything external. It's what we can put on us, or ways that we can change us. I mean, that's
things to fix.
Things to fix. I mean, if you open up like I don't read these anymore. I used to, but like women's magazines, right? If you're like standing in line at a store or whatever, all the women's magazines, or at an airport or something, you see that like most of the articles in those magazines are about things that the woman should change.
Oh yeah,
in herself. So that's
well, all the ways that you're wrong.
Right,
like
exactly.
Who you are and how you are.
What that means. Right.
Yeah.
How to fix yourself.
And I have something to sell you that can fix it.
Right. And that's how we're marketed. So we believe that there's something out there that will make it better, and then we look at other women and we see what they've done. And I think we've talked about this a bit before too, but to me it's women to women. I think that there's part of it in our society and in a patriarchal society and all of that. But I think in the day-to-day of why women do what they do, make the decisions that they make, go after changing something in themselves, I think that it is like at least 90% because of what they are seeing other women do.
Oh, totally. Society is covert and efficient in perpetuating our cultural values. Yes. There are two primary sources that I want to call out here. The entertainment industry and media, which you've touched on, sets the standards in the way that you see only 100-pound, white, blonde, cisgender, heterosexual, 25-year-old photoshopped women, and we absorb them. And second, companies within the beauty industry create problems you will then pay to solve, which is sort of what I alluded to earlier. So they spend billions of dollars to convince you that your natural self is unacceptable and you need to buy X, Y, and Z to hide and fix your way to social presentability and desirability. But don't buy into it, like, both figuratively and literally. You are enough exactly as you are. Like, I really want you to hear that. Because people are making billions of dollars off of convincing you that the opposite is true. But you are enough exactly as you are today. So the other night I was watching television at like 2:00 in the morning while I was working on our master bedroom closet renovation. And there was this infomercial for something called Crepe Erase. I don't know if you've seen that one. So when I saw it,
I don't have a TV.
When I saw it, I was like,
Wow. So the natural evolution of skin texture beyond your 20s is being pathologized and positioned as ugly here.
Wait, it's called a crepe?
Crepe erase. So they're saying your skin, like the natural aging process of skin, they're calling it, saying that it looks like a crepe, and they're selling a product called Crepe Erase. So,
oh my God.
Right. So like the natural evolution of skin texture beyond your 20s is being pathologized and positioned as ugly. And they are literally just making this up, like to sell me a solution to a problem they just invented. Because of course there's nothing wrong with the natural aging of skin. Like unless you're going to die when you're 22, like you're going to age. That's a beautiful thing. But then a couple days later, I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom mirror and realized I was subconsciously running my fingers over the skin on my chest and feeling like heavier with shame. And like I snapped out of it and looked at myself in the mirror and said like, no, my skin is beautiful. It tells my story, a story of countless days spent playing in the warm sunshine, of years with my baby's faces pressed to this very spot. I reject that shame. But it's so powerful that even when I am aware of it in the moment, like I'm seeing, oh, these people are trying to put this in my baggage. Like I'm not going to take it. Even still, those messages just sink in. Like had I never seen that infomercial, like passively as I was doing something else, had I never heard those words, like that whole concept of the way my skin ages being wrong would not have even been a part of me.
And yet it's still like, it still seeps in.
Yes.
It's everywhere. And when you look at other women, when you hear an infomercial, when you open a magazine, when you look on social media, you let's say you follow someone on social media for like the recipes they're sharing. But then this is like a person that's like a major icon on social media, has gotten big because she's probably a conventionally attractive Caucasian woman.
Right.
And
an influencer.
What'd you say?
They're influencers.
Yeah, they're influencers. And so then you look, then they share with you, well, here's what I do for my skincare, and here's what I do for this, and here's what I do for that. And it's not at all, there's no like malicious intent. These are people that don't even sell the skincare or have any like skin in the game for it. No pun intended. But they are influencers, and people want to know every single thing about what they do. And that's like this other layer of like the bizarreness of social media and what we think like, well, this person has this and this in their lives, or at least that's what they present on social media. So I want to do this and this just like them. I need to fix this and this in me, and I want to do what they are doing. And it's like none of it is like actually embodied. None of it is us being in our own bodies, looking at ourselves and our own individual needs. It's always some external influence, whether it's that crazy infomercial or anything else. It's constant external influence of what we need to do so that we can be like that other woman. And like that other woman that has good eyebrows, I want her eyebrows. That woman that has perky breasts, I want her breasts. That woman that has a really tight butt, I want her butt. And I don't want my gray hair, and I don't want this, and I don't want that. Right. And then on top of it, like you said, you were like the skin past the age of the 20s. It's a like crazy cultural obsession with youth. Like just wanting to look youthful, jealousy of youth, wanting to change ourselves. And that is, it's like this Band-Aid thing. It's this like truncated view of self, because if you ask any woman, like, do you want to be 23 again? Like 100%, everything in your life, do you want to be 23 again? Most women will say, no way. Like,
hell no.
It was so freaking hard. And I had no idea what I was doing. And it was so much turmoil and this and that. Like, but you don't get to say like, do you want to have just the skin on your face from when you were 22? Like, it's like, it's this weird
piecing us out
thing.
Like as just these disjointed body parts. And media does a good job of
breaking women down to that. Like I was reading some article the other day that had compiled all of these magazine covers in which women's faces were absent. So it was like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of magazine covers that just had women as various body parts.
That's so freaky.
Right? And a lot of these messages, like, I mean, I could do a whole separate podcast on the masculine mask, like for sure. They have, I mean, men get all sorts of fucked up. I'm just going to like drop F-bombs like crazy in this episode.
Go for it.
Messages about masculinity. But when we're talking about beauty, like there are products like to add gray to your hair, you know, marketed at men because... And like main characters and romantic leads in movies, like the men are often like a generation older than the women, you know?
Yes.
Like all of these messages that if you're male, as you age, your value increases. And if you are female, as you age, your value decreases. Which
Absolutely.
It takes a lot of work to be aware of all of those like bullshit messages and to actually speak to them and reject them for yourself. It's a choice that I have to make every morning, like when I get up and get ready and look in the mirror and go outside, showing up as my whole authentic self day after day after day. And so the first day that I did that, like, it was fucking scary. And so let's talk about role modeling, because that's really what I'm talking about here. Like this role modeling piece keeps coming up on this podcast. And you have to think about, what do you want your children to say about themselves when they look in the mirror? What do you want them to see, feel, and know about their raw beauty? What you believe and say about yourself becomes their inner voice. It's intergenerational, like you were talking about with your family. This is one of the most powerful ways those unhealthy patriarchal messages are passed down. So how has role modeling played into your relationship with beauty? And I know you talked about a little bit, you know, coming from the higher generations into you. How are you tapping into role modeling, looking downward for the generations after you?
I think the biggest thing as a woman is, I think this is probably true for any gender, but I can only speak for myself and my own body, is to be happy with oneself, to not always be showing ways that you want to change yourself, that you want to adapt yourself, to not talking about ways in which you're unhappy with yourself, not complaining about the natural process of aging, of bodies changing, of, you know, everything around what it really means to be a woman, you know. Like you were touching on some of these things before, and you were saying that like for men, they're more valued as they age, and then they're like, for women in our culture, I mean, I think there's definitely a bit of a shift happening right now, thankfully, but at least in the conventional model and what I grew up with, as a woman ages, across the board, she is less valued. Like physically, the way she looks, if she becomes a mother and gets like out of the game in the working world, as her breasts change shape and gravity takes hold, as just every single thing that happens when women get gray hair, and if you have gray hair, then that's weird. Like all of these things about just naturally being a woman and moving through life as a woman are not valued, are not embraced, are not, they're like, even a girl that gets her period, like then it's icky, you know. It's like you can even go back to like a 13-year-old. It's not even really, you know, just a woman growing up. And I think that the best thing I can do is talk about these things as they truly are, make them normal, make them part of conversation, like in my family, and totally embrace who I am and the beauty that I have and the wisdom that I have to gain day after day as I continue to age, as I continue to get an opportunity to be on a cool podcast, as I get to have awesome conversations with women about stuff like this, and that I keep getting the opportunities to surround myself by other women who are modeling these great things for their children and for generations to come. So I think that to me, it's just so exciting. Like,
to shift the cultural tide.
Yeah. And to not be naive to it, to like, so much of aging is about wisdom, and so many cultures around the world
honor that.
Completely honor it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the oldest people in the community are the people that are most honored and the people that you want to include the most in things. And of course, it's a lot of much more like communal living and village living and all of that. What we do with elderly people in America is like, okay, now you're no longer a valuable contribution to society. You can like go live by yourself in a nursing home.
Right.
You know, like that's the really elderly. But
well, yeah, I've talked on this podcast before about how in this society we shun the young and the old.
Yeah, we do. It's so crazy because there's like, okay, so what are like the valued ages? Like, is it just in your 30s? Are we talking about like one decade here? Like, what is valuable? And it's crazy because even people in their 20s like they're not valued in the workplace.
Right.
So but then you're a woman in her 30s that then becomes a mom. Okay, you're not really valued now either because you're like over here doing the mom thing and that's not contributing over here. Like, it's so weird.
Like, can we get a chart with all the rules? Like, when are we?
Like, let me know the flow chart of where I should go.
Like, when am I worthy of being alive and existing in public space where other people can lay eyes on me? Like,
yes.
what is that
and
about?
that to me is like, it's so much of what beauty is, because it's all of these images and like
too
and the
fat,
way,
too tall, too short, too skinny, too
and
this,
it's
too
always
that.
about going back. It's like, you know, after you have a baby, the huge conversation is like, I got to get my body back. I got to get back to like my pre-baby status. And it's like, sorry, sister, there is no pre-baby status. You had a baby.
Yes.
Like,
so I have a body after baby chapter in the Sage Parenting book. And
you do.
And I like kind of rant about that. For us.
It's just, but it's this obsession. It's you know, men don't go through that major shift, right? Like, obviously they age, but they don't have the huge hormonal markers that women have. They just don't. So they go through puberty, yes, but they're not getting their periods, and that's not a major shift. They're not having babies. They're not they're not going through maybe a postpartum depression. They're not going through perimenopause and then menopause. Like and then they don't have menstrual cycles. Like, all of the stuff that is like constantly changing in our bodies that are marking these shifts and these changes and these rhythms.
Celebrated.
What'd you say?
And all those things should be celebrated.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like, that's the beauty of being a woman. Like, it's like a superpower. Yeah. Like, I mean, this is...
The message, though, is that we need to erase the evidence that any of those things happened.
Exactly.
And how we change that, specifically when we're talking about role modeling, a big part of that is speaking to these as these things come up. So, like, after I had my third baby, and I remember hearing this with each one, but after I had my third baby, I was at like this kid's birthday party, and these other moms sort of gathered around and oohed and awed at the baby that was on my chest. And the message that they all sort of erupted in a flurry was, you look like you never even had a baby. You didn't have a baby. You look like you didn't even have a baby. And like, oh my God, you look amazing. It looks like you never even had a kid. And every time someone would say something like that, you know, my kids are there watching and listening, I would always speak to it. So I would always say something to the effect of like, I'm proud to have had a baby, you know, or like it doesn't even have to be major. Like I've talked about in other episodes, it's about like planting seeds. Like, so I'm planting seeds in my kids. I'm planting seeds in the people around me to actually speak to those messages. And sometimes even now, like, people will, when I'll show up places with my 3 kids, people will say, you don't look like you've had 3 kids. And I call it out every time.
What do you say?
I say, what does that mean?
Good. Okay, good.
What does that mean? Because I'm proud to have had 3 kids, you know, or I keep sort of gently nudging them, you know, to get to a point where where everyone who's within earshot can hear the absurdity of that statement. And I know the intention is good, you know, like
they're trying to extend me a quote unquote compliment. And by the way, like
they're just saying that like you look thin or you look young.
Basically, and like I have belly.
But if you're wearing a baby on your chest or whatever, then
right. And I just try to take those opportunities to engage in those conversations, particularly because my children are present listening. So yeah, like what does that mean? Like, oh, well, I just mean, well, and people, once you start to drill down into it, people know that saying like, you look smallish, like is absurd, and obviously has no inherent value. And so it just, and my husband sort of smirks every time somebody gives me sort of a backhanded compliment. And I say it's a backhanded compliment because in the same breath that they're trying to give me a quote unquote compliment, they're also putting a bunch of other people down.
Yeah. Exactly.
My husband smirks because he knows I'm not going to let it
You're not
go.
going to let it go. Yeah.
I'm not just going to smile and say thank you. Because What does that mean if I say thank you, right?
If you say thank you, then it's like, okay, I totally acknowledge that's a compliment. That's a great thing to say. And I'm glad that I look small.
Exactly. Well, and I want to speak to like this role modeling piece because it's so important, particularly with our children. Like my kids have never once ever heard me put my body down or put myself down. Like if a pair of pants don't fit, like the pants might be too small, but I don't say like I'm too big. Like they have never heard those words. Now it's sort of like you talked about your grandmother and her hairspray. Like it's sort of this joke in my family that my mother, who I'm not going to call out too much on this podcast because I know she listens and I love her and she's beautiful. But every birthday, it's this joke that she turns 25. And I have like totally engaged in conversation with her around that, how like, you're saying that like you're losing value beyond the age of 25 and you should be ashamed and not celebrating like all the years of experience and wisdom and all of the chapters that have been added to your story, beyond the age of 25. But she's that's not her thing. So, but my kids, sort of on the lower generation of that, my kids will often play this game where they ask everyone what their favorite number is. And it tends to always be people's ages. And so there's this running joke with my kids where they'll ask me what my favorite number is. And I'll always say the age that I am. So right now I'll say 35. And they always laugh and say, you always say the age that you are. And then I always respond with, because I love the age that I am. That's perfect. I love where I am right now today. I'm so grateful for my life and for who I am today or whatever. But it's sort of this joke with my kids that even when other kids are around, if they're talking about favorite numbers, they kind of like will roll their eyes and be like, my mom loves the age she is now. Like, she'll pick 35 every time.
So it's like that with like a hint of sarcasm.
Exactly.
Like, that's great.
Let me guess. You love who you are today.
It's old, Mom. It's getting old.
Exactly.
That's great.
We get it. You're present and grateful.
But that's such a fabulous message because now it's just a big joke, but they're absorbing that
truth. Yes. Yeah. I'm totally okay with that being like the thing that they laugh about me.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. Yeah. And I think that, so not necessarily even just your mom, but like the environment that you grew up in, what did you experience around conversations of beauty, whether with friends, parents, just culturally?
Yeah, all the same things that you talked about.
Okay.
Shame and lots and lots of makeup and plastic surgery and I think and too, like having grown up in Southern California, like
that's right.
There's my family culture, which has all of its messages that were very powerful, and then there's also like the community culture around me, and so it's really hard for me to engage in this conversation on a public platform without throwing any people under the bus. But I think definitely those
really
were the
throwing
messages.
Individuals under the bus because everybody is still a product of what they were taught. Also, I totally like deeply feel what you said about fault. Like it's not. None of this is anybody's fault. It's just a matter of like whether any individual woman has decided to reject more of this, you
Right.
know,
Has the
like there's
opportunity
the whole
and the
pile
drive.
of shit, and like how much of it do you embrace, or how much of it do you go along with, I should say, and how much of
Yeah.
it do you reject?
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
completely agree.
that's the circle you're in. I mean, I definitely attribute like the changing view based on the circle that I kept pursuing, but it, you know, like it really did come out of a need to feel better, you know, health wise.
Yeah.
But then I all of a sudden, so it kind of felt like over the course of a couple of years, I was surrounded by people that were talking much more about uh, what inner beauty was, or what we can do internally to, if we want to look a certain way externally, then it's also about what we do for our bodies, for our health. It's the foods we eat. It's certain like cleansing rituals and daily practices and all these other things that we can make as part of our day. But that's the circle that I ended up in on the health front, you know, like fellow
Right.
health coaches and integrative health practitioners, and then books that I started reading. But if you don't seek it out, if you don't decide I want to go down that path more, then you're just over here with the conventional view of beauty,
Yeah.
of the products, of the fix it, of the these are things that are wrong with you and these are your options.
And I just want to say, I love, and this is why I like surround myself with brilliant women. I love that you totally sensed that I was holding back and invited me to show up a little more fully. I freaking love that.
That's awesome.
Next, Deena and I dive into time. We talk about how your values show up in the routines and rituals of your daily life, particularly around self-care. Then we go into quantity. You know I'm talking about minimalism here in that bathroom of yours. I go into how to really revolutionize that. And then we go into quality, how to find the products that you do choose to invite into your life, how to get those to be aligned with your values of things like simplicity and nourishing your whole system. If you want to listen to the rest of that lovely bonus content, head on over to Patreon and become a patron, and you will unlock all of this delicious bonus content that overflows from these fantastic conversations that I have with my friends, because we just want to keep talking. So let's move into our Q&A. I posted in the Sage Parenting Tribe on Facebook that we were going to chat about beauty today and asked if they had any questions about it. A bunch of Sage mamas said they are struggling with their relationship with makeup. Where does artistic self-expression end and patriarchy-imposed masking of externally defined flaws begin? Now, and I want to make like a note that I feel pretty strongly about makeup, but I specifically sought out a guest for this episode that I know does wear makeup and does do it in like in an ethical way that aligns with our values. So I'm gonna go into my little spiel about makeup, but know that I am holding the space for you to disagree with me and share your perspective on it.
Awesome.
Okay, so I don't wear makeup. This is not a judgment of people who choose to express some artistic creativity through makeup. I know that some people view it as like their face being a canvas and, you know, makeup being art for them. If putting on a bright pink lip makes you feel smiley and sassy, then rock it. I do own some makeup for media appearances and such a few times a year. But after some soul searching many years ago, I realized that for me, it felt like a mask society told me I had to wear to be beautiful. And I wanted to respond to that by practicing radical acceptance of myself and showing up fully and authentically in my life while aligning my time and money with my values. But mostly it was about role modeling. It felt dissonant to me to tell my children that they are beautiful exactly as they are and then paint away what society defined as flaws, but of course are actually natural and beautiful. I have laugh lines and crow's feet from 35 years of joy, for example, and I'm showing up with those for the world to see and for my children to see. I want to normalize natural womanhood and just send the message that you are enough. I also want to specifically speak to the discomfort. So many of the responses to this question included some form of makeup makes me feel comfortable with myself. But because these are sage parents we're talking about, they are questioning why they feel uncomfortable without makeup, and rightfully so. Remember that discomfort is an invitation for growth. So lean into it bravely. At first, it was so scary for me, but now I just feel free. So that if we choose to wear makeup, it's because we want to and not out of a fear of showing up as our true, beautiful selves. Now, Deena, what is your perspective on makeup?
There's so much that you just said that I totally agree with. And I think the struggle of it all and the questioning that we do is something I do regularly, to be totally honest, that I do regularly with myself when it comes to beauty, when it comes to beauty rituals, when it comes to things that feel really good to me. And I think it's always an evolution of consciousness, I think is the big thing that I've come to understand it as, like, for myself. So whereas I feel like everything in the conventional beauty realm that I did previously was because it wasn't a conscious choice, really. It was something that I just thought I should be doing, so I did. It was something that people around me did, so I did. It was something that other women did that I thought looked good, so I did it too. And it did, the thought process didn't really go beyond that. It was just like, yeah, this is just what you do, and so I did. And then that's shifted a lot, like, some different examples that I've given. And the makeup piece, I used to, like I said, I used to wear like conventional makeup. So just makeup that you would get, like it was actually a really bonding, fun thing that my mom and I did, where we would go like through my 20s, early 30s, whatever. Like if I was with my mom, we would go to a makeup counter at a department store and we would get makeovers, and then we'd buy a bunch of makeup, like hundreds of dollars is what you would end up spending because the makeup was expensive. And that was a fun thing we did. And so it's something that I really like. I still think of it as fun. I think of it as kind of bizarre now, but also it was fun. It was a fun thing to do, but there's so much in it about like, why is this our bonding activity? Why is this the thing that we feel like we need to be doing? Why is this something that like I value doing with my mom and all that? But anyway, then as I made the shift towards like a much more holistic approach to health overall and what I bring into my home, I only wanted natural makeup, quote unquote. I wanted one of, the lines of makeup that were much cleaner and not filled with all that other stuff. So that's the journey that I've been on with it. Even still, I used to wear makeup every day, and now I don't at all. I think I look great when I don't wear makeup. For me, and full disclosure, this is like 75% true. So I would say when I say true, I mean like 75%. I am sure that it's conscious. Like there's still like 25% like where I'm like, do I do this because I've always done it, because it's so part of me, because I'm 38 years old and these are things over decades that I've been exposed to, or is it really, but
I love your vulnerability and honesty and fearlessness. I love all of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly where I am with it. But the makeup that I choose to wear and the way I choose to apply it is not what I consider is not a mask. It is fun for me. I do like the ritual of it. I do like playing around with colors. I really like color. It's something that like I always like to have in my wardrobe, like a big variety of color. I like bright colors. I like bright colors in nature. I like bright colors on me. I like bright colors around me. So those are things that I'm always really drawn to. And so like when I put on like a pink lipstick, and every time I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, yeah, that looks awesome. Like, and it's a totally different perspective. Like I don't honestly, like I used to look for compliments. I used to like want to present myself a certain way and look a certain way and my makeup and my hair or whatever. And if I, it seems so weird to say, but I know that it's true. Like if
Seeking
I didn't,
approval.
yeah, I was seeking approval. And if someone didn't say to me, wow, you look great, it was like, what's going on? Like how come no one noticed that I looked great? And now it's not on my radar. It's something that when I put on like a fun like little like a purple eyeshadow like in the crease of my eye, or if I put on a little bit of bronzer or some lipstick or something like that, I look in the mirror and I'm like, that looks really good. Like I really like it. I like the way it makes me feel. I like the way it's highlighting my cheekbones. And granted, like I could say like, well, why do I feel like I have to highlight my cheekbones?
Exactly.
Why is that important? Because like, I mean, that's totally like a beauty industry.
Why does how I look in full makeup feel to me like the best version of myself, or beautiful or whatever, like just questioning all of that.
The difference is that I don't think of it anymore as the best version of myself, because I will look in the mirror when I'm not wearing any makeup and also think I look beautiful now.
Oh, I love that.
So that's where it's shifted for me, and it's a choice. And like, and granted, like if I have a meeting, if I'm doing a presentation, anything like that, I will always be wearing makeup. If I'm just going about my day, if I'm sitting at a cafe working, if I'm whatever I'm doing, I'm not wearing makeup. So that's definitely a thing, like why when I present myself to other people, do I need to have this thing? And it could be varying degrees. It might just be like a lip gloss, but it's always something.
Right.
And versus like if I'm just with Zeke or I'm doing whatever, just a day for myself, I'm not.
I think those were like steps on my evolution out of makeup too. So like my mom doesn't leave her bedroom without like full makeup. And when I was in 6th grade, like I was given makeup and was like, okay, it's time. And then if ever I would show up somewhere without makeup, I would be told like, oh, you look so pretty with makeup on, like why no makeup today?
Yeah.
And so it was a tall hurdle for me to overcome, but I started small. Like I started with something like you talked about, like an errand that like feels innocuous. And like the first time I did it, I felt like so vulnerable and less than and all of those things. But then
so there was a stage when you were wearing makeup all the time?
Oh yeah.
A stage in your adult life?
Yes, it was in early adulthood that I walked away from it.
Okay.
But there was a stage really like all through my adolescence, I would say like I was in makeup. And then probably in old there was never a stage where I wore it all the time every day.
Okay.
But I very much had that message that like had accepted that message that if I wasn't wearing makeup, like I was less than. And so then just as I started to grow into myself more and I started questioning it more, I started small. And then after doing it so many times, I would get more confident with it. And then I would extend out to another layer. And then I would extend out to another layer. Like when I first started practicing therapy, like at first, like I had like, makeup when I would show up to work. And then I started questioning it. Like, well, what would that feel like to show up from a more authentic position with my clients, and
right.
And so then I started extending it to that realm and just so it started building and building from there. And then where I am now, like I wear makeup when I go on television because they basically require it. So if I believe in the message that I really want to get out, then I sort of have to play the game a little bit in order to be allowed that platform.
I get that.
And then photo shoots, like the same things, kind of the same deal, like to get a seat at the table, you have to sort of like play the game a little bit. But then once I'm there, like I show up fully as my natural self. And I think a big part of the motivation for me is, of course, shifting that cultural tide, but also just that role modeling piece. Like when I say to my kids, you are beautiful exactly as you are 100%, like I want to live those words that I'm saying. But I also don't feel judgment, like when I see,
your beautiful makeup face in a photo, like I'm not thinking like, oh, she's betraying her feminism. You know what I mean?
Right. Or like, oh, she can't be much of a holistic health person.
Right.
Right. Yeah. No, and those are things that I've questioned too. And I think, like I said, I'm 75% sure that for me, the makeup thing is just, it's kind of like the decision I make to use Diva Curl hair products. Like it has like, they have like no parabens or whatever. That's like the extent of like quote unquote health claims. And I think that for me, that's what it is. It's like, and it's not from the toxicity perspective, because the makeup I use is super clean, really not toxic at all. But I think that for me, it's really like, it's a life enhancer. And I absolutely can go deep and really think about why it's a life enhancer. But I think that there's also just beauty in being like, this genuinely, like, it does make me happy. I do like this. And there's so many other areas in my life where I don't, where I opt out. And this is something that I don't do all the time, that it's not a mask to me, that it's not something that I can't live without, that I will go on trips, I will go places, I will do things where I don't even think of bringing my makeup, which in a previous part of life would never have been the case. So, and it's not even like I'm unrecognizable without makeup. You know, some women you see and you're like, whoa, you look so different, because I never see you without a full face of makeup. So it's none of those things for me anymore. It's truly, and there is something that I also, from the health perspective, I really love being able to use a line of makeup that does have really nice ingredients, and to be able to put that out there too, because there is something about like being a health coach, being, I'm not going to say public figure, but like the being in a position where people say to me, like, what do you do? What do you use? And I actually really love, given that most of my clients are women, being able to say like, well, you know, for my face oil, I do this and this and this, and that's all I use. And that's what I love. And that's what I recommend. And so I actually love being able to empower women to make these better choices. And so part of that is, it's a bit of like an experiment. It's product research. It's a whole bunch of different things for me in my specific situation.
And I think there aren't like so much rights or wrongs. It's more like, I really want to challenge people to question all of these things. Like, I totally what would that be like for you to not wear makeup for a week? You know, like,
and I do it all the time.
Yeah. And by you, I mean,
I totally agree with you. And where do these things really come from? And what is this about for you? Is it the value of your mother? Is it the value of this person? Is it like, where is it coming from? And is it true to you?
Yeah.
I think that's where it's like such a bigger question.
Yeah.
And
so another thing that I want to touch on with the makeup, just as a feminist, is the double standard. Like, a double standard makes me want to vomit.
Me too.
In any facet of life.
You and I are the same there. Where we're just like, why?
I am allergic to double standards. Like, I have a heightened sensitivity and severe allergy to double standards. And the makeup thing really is a pronounced example of that. Like, that if I have a pimple and my husband has a pimple, that he's allowed to show up with that and I'm not. Yep. You know, so I think not wearing makeup, part of my rationale and my reasoning and my motivation behind it as well, is that all of the men around me can show up as their full authentic selves and receive the message, you are enough, exactly as you are and who you are today. And I cannot. Like, I have to either hide or embellish you know, what I am. Why do I have to embellish it? Why can't I just show up as I am? And why can't that be enough? And so my answer to that is like, it is enough. and I am going to show up as that. And then of course, like, I'm trying to change the world here. So like, you know, the more times I show up, I feel like other people see that, and that carves out a little bit more space for other people to do the same.
I mean, I totally agree with you. And this is where I come back to my 75% sure thing. Like, because I'm like, you're right. Like, Gideon, my husband, like, he ages. He has more gray hair as time goes on. He has more lines around his eyes, more that, like, all of that stuff. And no one looks at him and no one would think anything about what he should or should not do to make himself look younger, better, brighter, to highlight his cheekbones. You know, like, no one, it's not even remote. It's not on the radar.
Exactly.
And it's just a woman thing.
Exactly.
And it's the things we want to change as women that are about us being women. Like, if we come back to like the cycles thing, like, you might get a pimple every time you're in your luteal phase. Like, that's very common, you know? And why does that have to be hidden? Why can't that be like, yes, I'm going to menstruate in a few days. And
honoring the value of all of the seasons. Like, I know you've talked about like your hair graying and allowing that natural process to unfold. And I'm the same way. I'm getting gray hair. And I hadn't dyed my hair in like probably since my wedding, like a gajillion years ago. And I was feeling like bored with my hair, and it was really long. My hair had been short for most of my adult life, and so I didn't want to cut it. So I decided I wanted to dye it, but I did not want to lose the gray. Like, I really wanted to honor and like celebrate, you know, the earned time that has passed in my life, like the chapter I'm on in my story. I didn't want to dye those. So I did that balayage. I'm probably saying that wrong. Like hair dye treatment, right? Where like you're sort of dyeing the ends and it like, there's like an ombre, it fades up because I didn't want to, awesome. Like, I still wanted to have those grays. And I was able to have like a conversation with my kids about that, you know, as I'm deciding like, what am I going to do with my hair? Well, I want like, I really embrace like the way the way I'm growing and evolving and aging and how that's reflected on the outside in a beautiful way. My kids call it wizard hair, by the way, which I freaking love.
So
they
freaking
say I am
cool.
growing more magical as I get older, which
is 100% true.
Yeah, so it's my wizard hair, and they were like, but you don't want to lose your wizard hair, right? I'm like, no, I don't want to lose my wizard hair. So I just had to
so awesome. I mean, I think it's funny because it's one of those things that is, I think like dyeing hair is usually like a given. I mean, you see it in like pockets.
Right.
Like, we used to live in, before we moved to San Diego, we lived in Northampton, Massachusetts, which is like a total college town, super liberal, very natural. Everything that you associate with like supernatural living. And a lot of women there have gray hair. More than not, their hair, just like everybody that I knew, their hair was just naturally graying. But here in Southern California, plus most people are blonde. So like, you can't,
I was just going to say,
so
that was a pronounced difference when we moved from SoCal up to the PNW. It was one of the things that just made me like a giddy with excitement. And I knew like I found my place and
you
my
could
people.
See graying hair.
Because, well, at natural hair, like in San Diego, everyone's like bleach blonde. And I'm totally generalizing, and I love San Diego. I shouldn't say this, but
no, but it's much more. It's so much more common. It's blonde. It's a certain wave in the hair. It's this. It's that. Like, I walk around with my like black with gray, big curly hair, and it's not at all common. But it's definitely it's again, it's like an area, being totally honest, that I do struggle with. I am 99.9% sure I will never color my hair. But and all for like, from all the things that, like when we were talking earlier about values, right? Yeah. Like my values of simplicity, values of my time, values of my money, values of not exposing myself to toxic products. There are hair dyes now that are a lot less toxic, not totally. You can't really effectively dye the hair without that. But I don't want to go get my hair dyed every 5 or 6 weeks or do it. And anything you do in your home is going to be super toxic. I don't want to expose myself to that. I don't want my child to see me doing it. I don't want to spend the money on it. I don't want to spend the time. Yeah. I don't like everything about like dyeing gray hair to like actually maintain that. Yeah. I have zero interest in.
Yes.
So, and then there's really like the strong philosophical thing about what does it mean if I if I keep changing this. And every time, like so often my mom will be like, oh, you're getting more gray. You think you're gonna keep it? You know? And I'm not throwing my mom under the bus at all. Like these are all things that I talk about with her all the time.
Yeah,
and
moms, we're not throwing you under the bus.
No,
we love
you moms. We love you. And my mom, I mean, I grew up like seeing my mom dye her hair in our bathroom. I helped her. I put on the plastic gloves that came in the like Clairol box, and I painted her hair, and it was really fun. Like watch the grays go away, and I did that all through my childhood with my mom.
Yep.
And it's a really it's an ongoing conscious choice. Like that's one where like any given day that I choose not to put makeup on, that I choose not to do this or that, it's an ongoing thing, and it comes from it's a consciousness that like I have to be in if I want to like to live this life. And as like just like you, I see myself as like I want to be able to change the world. I personally, you know, if anything, like selfishly, I want to be surrounded by women who uphold like the values of beauty that I do, because
you want to attract that.
Right. I want to attract that, because more and more the other makes me just, I don't know, like feel kind of yuck, like just disenchanted and like that again, you know?
It's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to just add, so I went away last week. It was something that I felt like I really needed. I don't know if you saw that I posted about this on Facebook. Did. Yes. So I went away for 3 days. We had gone through some intense, stressful family stuff, which thankfully is so much better. But I felt like I needed just time away. I felt like I needed time away from my everyday routine, time away from being needed, from compromising anything. And that was what I just was like drawn to. And I wanted quiet, and I wanted to read books and have meals leisurely and wake up when I wanted to wake up and go to bed when I wanted to go to bed. And I just like wanted space to journal and quiet. And I rented an Airbnb in like the trees, and it was just me and like some toads that I could hear a whole bunch, and it was amazing. I barely saw other people. It was everything that I wanted. But what came out of it was so much more than I could have imagined. Like I got all of that stuff, like everything that I listed. But I went on a Tuesday and I left on a Thursday. And a Thursday morning, I got up and I ate a nice breakfast and I showered, and I got out of the shower and I looked at myself in the mirror, like obviously just wearing a towel, no makeup, nothing. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, whoa, it's not that I didn't recognize myself, but there was this whole different beauty. And I took like a whole bunch of selfies, like for myself.
Yeah.
That were like, because I looked really beautiful, like in the truest, authentic, like filled up, fulfilled, energized. I had done a whole bunch of journaling. I had read like a book and a half that were just exactly what I needed to read in this moment of my life. And I could see this like glow coming through. I could see like my eyes were kind of sparkling, like and I feel it right now. I'm feeling this like warm feeling inside me where like, and my smile was a different smile. And to me, like that was this like, that sums it up, you know, like that's where like that to me is like the true beauty of it all, where like, you know, if we look at 3 categories and we say like the products we use, the healthy choices we make in our lives, and like the mind and the heart, you know, like of those 3 things, I feel like it's definitely the mind and the heart that is at the top of the list.
For sure.
And it was really, and I feel really like liberated to be able to say this like publicly on a podcast. Like I looked in the mirror and I looked so beautiful.
Yeah, you did.
So it was just like, and I want more of that. Like I want to hear moms and women and my friends like say like, I look so beautiful today. I feel so beautiful today. I am so beautiful. You are beautiful, you know, like, but not from the like, what lipstick are you wearing? It's so nice. I want to get that.
And I
It's
love
more
how you whittled that down. You started with like, I look beautiful. Then you went to, I feel beautiful. Then you went to, I am beautiful. I love how you,
but that's what it really is, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so that was like, no makeup, nothing to do with a product whatsoever. And that's to me like what it's how do we find the ways in our lives to obviously I don't need to go away for 3 days all the time to be able to feel beautiful, but it was like
that's the challenge, how to integrate
that
nourishment
integrate that.
Yeah, into your
because that's like
life.
the real, like the buzzword of self-care or phrase, like that's the real self-care. It's recognizing what do you need to thrive in your body, to be beautiful, and truly what that means. And it doesn't ever mean like hair dye or lipstick or breast implants or like more time at the gym, or
it's holding the space for for your needs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was like so much more profound. And I can recall that feeling. And that I'll be able to recall it for a really long time and integrate those things. And it's just a completely different conversation around beauty than anything I've ever been exposed to. And it feels so much more real to me.
Oh, I love that. A day in the life. Since we're going around changing the world here, describe your favorite day this week and share with us why you loved it.
I think my favorite, in the past week, I'd say over the weekend, we've been trying to get out in nature, like real nature, not like
manicured lawn nature.
Not manicured, like, even like the botanical gardens, like not that, but like walking on the lagoon or going on hiking trails and just
love it,
exploring the world. Because that was actually something I took away from when I did my getaway last week. And I had been feeling the need for it much more, but just the exploration.
Yeah, get into the wild.
Exactly. And obviously very inspired by sage parenting. So we got up, we did like a fun Saturday morning at home, breakfast together. We often like go out for coffee. We'll go to like some coffee shop and grab coffee or tea or whatever. And Zeke is like totally used to that ritual. He always has a sip of Gideon's espresso that everybody around us is like, what's happening? And I like, sometimes I'm like, yeah, we just really want to expose him to bitter flavors. And they're like, what the hell? You're a crazy person. So, anyway, so I digress. So we went and just went for like a really nice walk on a lagoon, and it was just meandering, and Gideon and I were having great conversation, and we were, and sharing, like Zeke was sharing with us everything he was seeing. And it was an opportunity to this has been a big thing for us in parenting lately, is not pointing things out to Zeke and guiding Zeke and doing that, as you know. And we, and it was just so awesome. It was such a happy, fulfilling morning. Like we all really got our needs met. And I feel like everything I'm saying is like straight out of stuff I've learned from you, but I'm seeing it so much now that like we are all in this like mutual relationship, and we all need to get our cups filled, and we all need to do things that we enjoy. Like if I'm doing an activity that is only for Zeke that I think totally sucks, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And so this nature walk, we were out for like 2.5 hours. It was, everything about it was awesome. There was like this huge tortoise there, and then we had snacks, and then we went for a walk again, and then we were inside the little like information center thing that was like near the lagoon, and it was just awesome. It was really, really fun to just let Zeke explore as he wanted to. And when he went off and did his exploration, it was time for me and Gideon to just really connect. And then there were times when I was more with Zeke, or he was, or the three of us were sitting on the ground together having a picnic. And
I love it.
It was so delicious. It was just such a happy, fulfilling morning. And then we like all got our needs met in different ways while Zeke took a nap. And then we went for another walk later in the day and ran into a bunch of neighbors and played, and then all cooked dinner together. And it was just like at each step of the way, it was a really just like happy day.
Yes. So I'm going to have to refer people to this podcast when I'm doing coaching and I'm talking about
That's great.
that concept.
Like at minute, then you can see where. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of what we've talked about and a lot of what you've coached us on. And there are days when it all comes together easier than others. And this was just one of those days. No, Zeke, Zeke just walked in.
Oh, hi, Zeke.
חמוד, אני אתן לך נשיקה ואז אתה הולך. I love you.
I wait myself and I scratch Kathy and I push Ellie and I hold with his hand tight and he cried and my food.
You threw your food?
I did a lot of things. And
Do you have a lot of big feelings today? Okay, I'll give you a hug in a little bit. I love you. Okay, bye-bye.
I'm swooning so hard and I'm totally leaving that in.
You are?
Oh, that's so staying in.
I guess there was a lot happening this morning that he had to report back.
Oh, that was beautiful. Oh, I love you, Zeke. Okay, so let's move into our deep dive. Thank you for the segue, Zeke.
If you want the show notes sent right to your inbox, just subscribe over on sageparenting.com and you won't miss out on all the Sage family goodness.
What are your favorite beauty products or resources for people to like dive deeper into this issue of beauty?
My favorite, I would say, I mean, again, like simple. So going simple, grab yourself a good quality, like well-reviewed on Amazon. There's ones with like thousands of reviews, argan oil and jojoba oil. Just get these oils into your home because you're going to use them for so many different things, for skincare, for everything. The dry brush that I recommended, grab yourself a dry brush on Amazon. And then I am a huge fan of Young Living essential oils. So their potency, quality, sourcing, they own and operate all their own farms. And for me, that's a huge one because I shop at farmers markets. I want to be as close to the farmer and the land as possible for everything I buy. So their oils, just the efficacy, everything across the board when it comes to the purity is the highest that I've tried, and I've experimented a ton. So I am also a distributor and educator of how to use Young Living oils and how to like bring them into the home and use them. We use them as our first line of defense. So it comes back to all the values I was sharing earlier of cost effectiveness and simplicity and time and everything. This like small collection of oils, we use them for everything in our home, whether it's cleaning, laundry, dishes, stain removal, degreasing, a pimple, whatever it might be. This is what we use. And I do love their skincare, and their makeup line is my favorite line I've ever used, which is saying a lot because I've used a lot of makeup lines. What I found over time with like, especially the natural stuff, is that it just didn't do what I wanted makeup to do. Like I wanted it to be clean, I wanted it to stay on, and I wanted it to look really good. And they wouldn't do that. Like there would always be one or two in that list that it didn't make the mark. And their Savvy Minerals is a pure, really simple mineral makeup, and it doesn't really look makeup-y. I don't feel it at all on my face, which is a huge thing when it comes to that whole mask. And
yeah, your makeup always looks really natural.
Thank you. That's a big piece for me. And so that's the specific line that I educate on, that I use in my home, that I will always use for so many different things. So we use them on Zeke, whether it's like, again, like digestively, immunity, everything, that's what we use. And I think that's it for like, you know, as far as like a product recommendation, because I know that like so much of this was not so much.
Well, yeah, we're sort of like the moral is like you don't need a bunch of products,
right?
So
and that's the thing. But that's where like we do use. I mean, and that's absolutely my moral. But the collection of essential oils that I have, make my life so much easier.
Well,
I
and that's
feel
aligned with minimalism for sure, is that
Exactly.
you don't need 40 things of makeup. Instead, invest in like 5 things of makeup if you choose to wear makeup that you can feel really good about.
And then separate from makeup, like when it comes to other products, the stuff that can go a long way, like in multiple areas of life. So like frankincense is what I use on my skin. I put frankincense on my skin every day, and I love what it does. It's given my skin like a really nice complexion. It's improved my skin over time. It's great for, fine lines, if that's something that you care about, all of that stuff. But then it's also great for a burn. It's great for a bruise. It's great for healing a cut. It's great for spiritual awareness and meditation, and it's great for sleep. So I don't want to have like 10 different products for 10 different things. If there's one bottle that can meet all of those needs, then that makes so much more sense to me. Yeah. And that's what I do with the essential oils. So, yeah.
So, well, tell us about like how people can get in touch with you and work with you, because for those of you listening, I love Deena, and I only have people on this podcast who I have total faith in. And so I highly recommend her. So how can people find you?
Okay, so website's still under construction, but you can go to deenabarselah.com. It will take you to my online community that exists right now, and that website will be done in the next month, where there will be recipes and how-tos and my thoughts on beauty and my thoughts on health and all these other things that will guide you. So deenabarselah.com, follow there, but then also just connect with me on Facebook. So just Deena Barselah on Facebook. I only have one presence. And then beyond that, I've created a group called Your Healthiest Year, and I created it with a couple other moms / holistic health practitioners. They are all moms, but they're also holistic health practitioners. And the idea of the group, and Rachel contributed to this group too, the idea of the group is really about women thriving. It's every month there's a different theme. And we talked about resilience. This month we're talking about transformation and transition, and we're doing a cleanse and a sense of renewal. But the cleanse is not just like drink green juice all day. It's a cleansing from a movement perspective and spiritual perspective and thoughts and all of these different rituals. And every month, like I said, is different. May is going to be around cycles and rhythm. So we're going to talk about the cycles of the moon. We're going to talk about really understanding menstrual cycle and the 4 different distinct phases of menstrual cycle. We're going to talk about seasons, what it means to eat with the seasons and be in alignment with the cycles that are happening around us. And so it's just a really great, less conventional, kind of like this conversation around health and thriving and well-being. And it's just the type of thing I've wanted to cultivate for years, and I'm so glad that now it's happening. And so everybody is invited to be part of that group. You can just search Your Healthiest Year on Facebook and ask to be invited.
I love all of that. And in addition to following Deena on Instagram, I also really enjoy following Brooke Hampton of Barefoot 5. Do you follow her?
No, who is
Okay,
that?
so you need to follow her. She basically posts memes, but so many of them are about like beauty from like a wild and feminist perspective.
Barefoot 5 is her Instagram handle?
Barefoot 5 is her Instagram handle. I every time one of her posts pops up in my feed, I know I'm like, okay, gotta like, let me just let it wash over me.
Awesome.
So I love her. Brooke Hampton at Barefoot 5. You guys should follow her on Instagram too. I haven't reached out to her. I'm going to have to reach out to her and be like, hey, I stalk you and I talk about you in this episode.
That would be awesome.
All right, and I am going to put the links to all of this stuff that we've talked about in the show notes, including like my post on minimalism in my bathroom, so you can see exactly what like my beauty routine is, and then the post I just wrote about my morning routine, what stuff I use, which is super minimalist, and all that jazz. So thank you so much for talking to me today, Deena.
Of course.
This conversation has been magical.
So good. I'm glad Zeke got to be a part of it.
Zeke, you're famous now.